a man cannot be a good husband or father until he's become a man first. Today I want to talk about what it means to be the head of the household. I feel like it's a really good topic, especially to go with the Saturday themes on family leadership. I'm pumped that you guys showed up. I know it's a Saturday, a couple days before Christmas and whatnot, so it can make things difficult. But I think today's discussion is going to be one of those topics that's really misunderstood, but a critical role for us as men, which is being the head of the household. It's about leadership, responsibility, and creating that legacy that passes on to our children, and then it outlasts us. So when we define the role of the head of the household, there's biblical foundations. If we start in the Bible at Genesis 2:18, it says, "The Lord said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him." So that already puts us in this, you could say, position number one, because God created man. And then he said it wasn't good for us to be alone. Therefore, he wanted to make us a helpmate, is the actual Hebrew word translates to helpmate, that is suitable for us. So I actually have a Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, the Old Testament. And I actually have a study Bible. And it has this really good quote about this verse. And it says, "It is not good that a man is alone," indicating that we are speaking here of something that is essentially, it's not good at all. So regardless of its emotional effect on man, the presence of a single man is undesirable in the sense that it may give him a false impression that he is a deity. So if we think of any men in life who are single, it's usually literally 2 options. 1, we're very lonely, are unfulfilled, or 2, we treat ourselves as we are that deity by instant gratification. So, it's like the guy who's single has money and kind of portrays himself as like this playboy type of man because he is putting himself in that position of being what is thought of as a deity. And really, man's purpose in life is for us to have a family. God blesses Adam with a wife. Nowhere in the Bible does he bless us with a bunch of money, fame, ranch, business, anything. The blessing that he gives us is a wife. We have to remember that. Like even moving forward, like in Ephesians, it says, Ephesians 5:23, "For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior." So if we are the head, it's not through that we're the head of the household through dominance and or control, because I think there's been generational ebbs and flows of how they portrayed themselves as head of the household. There could be that dominance, my way or the highway. And so there's sometimes it can muddy the waters in what the word head of the household actually means. If you have a man who is an insecure man, he is going to rule through fear and dominance. Does that make sense? But if we are to lead our house as Christ was the head of the church, and ultimately he sacrificed himself for it, how is that supposed to look for us as men as we are leading our household? If Christ came down and he did not ask to be served, he was the one who was serving the church. But ultimately, as the head of the household, the weight goes on our shoulders to make sure the household is being run in an order that we deem appropriate. So it's kind of like and too often it's like, we go to work, we punch the clock, and then we come home and men thinks that's the time for them to rest. When really that's the time for us to make sure that our house is in order, that our children are in order, that our wife's needs are met. So literally being the head of household is called upon us from day one, literally from day one. And we can even go into 1 Timothy 5:8. "But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for the members of his household, he is denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." So again, it is literally our duty as men to be the provider and protector of our household, through and through. That is part of what it means to be the head of the household. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a relationship where the wife's the breadwinner. But even in that sense, the man should still be the head of the household, because financial is really only one tier of many when it comes to being the head of the household. And now, I wouldn't discourage anyone who has a relationship where maybe she is the breadwinner, maybe she went to medical school, she became a doctor, and maybe you didn't. Maybe your passion was something that had a less of an income, but it still doesn't mean that she should be the head of the household based off one item that is provided in that house. So like when it comes to like the biological and practical roles of leadership, it has been set in very clearly since the beginning of what our role is in regards to the head of the household. And it's not something that is created by society by any means. It's rooted in history and biology. You can go back to any decade outside the last 40, 50 years, and it's universally accepted that a man is a head of household. Now, that doesn't mean, again, you don't take in consideration our wife's needs. We most definitely should. But from a universal standpoint and a historical standpoint, I mean, you go to the Victorian age, men treated women as just the most precious, fragile objects there were. We fought and died for our women because we knew what would happen if men of another country, men of a different tribe, what would happen to them if we did not fight for them tooth and nail. But for some reason, modern society wants to take that away of us treating them as they're the most precious and fragile creatures that there are. We're treating them that way out of respect, not out of control or dominance. It's merely respect. Again, the historical precedence and the biblical precedence has been there since the beginning. Being that head of the household is literally about taking responsibility for the decisions, the direction of the family, and the outcome of that family as well. So let's go through some of the like modern misconceptions. And definitely a misconception number one is that society has always pushed men to be the head of the household. Clearly not the case. It was the idea with God from the beginning and not a societal norm. But again, I just addressed this. There's this push from a very modern push to diminish the role. And it's the reason why I'm doing these Zooms, because we need to reclaim that role for the benefit of our wives and the benefit of our children. Because if we don't reclaim that role, our children are literally going to inherit the same marriage we have and the same roles. It's the very exception, it's the anomaly that they are going to choose differently. Misconception number two is that leadership is about control and dominance. True leadership is a servitude. You know, a man leads by serving his family, not controlling them. Literally the example, if you're walking the walk, that is the greatest way that we can serve our family, is by actually doing the things that we say. And like, this is something that I've worked on over the years, because my initial relationship with my wife was a very selfish relationship. And then I realized the more that I served her, the more that I looked towards her needs, the better the relationship got. And as a man, it's literally what we are called to do. You go look in the Old Testament, you got these Jewish men who would work from sundown to sun up. And then they would go home and still disciple their children for however many more hours. They did not put that on the wife to continue to do once he was done with work. But we've gotten soft as a society and soft as men that we're tired. We have excuses. But it's literally the only legacy we have to leave is our children and how they conduct themselves with our name. So we've been called to do this since the beginning. And it is only now that it's like we're trying to reel that back in and essentially let society raise our children for us, which ends up being toxic. You actually end up raising children who are easily manipulated, who are easily controlled, who have no confidence, that don't understand the power of a nuclear family. Statistically, it only favors nuclear families, the good and the bad, and not having that nuclear family is terrible when you look at the statistics as far as incarceration rates, obesity rates, etc. Again, Mark 10:45. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. It goes to the thing of when we are done with work, how are we serving our family? And it just doesn't end at the end of the day. Like us as men, it's like what we are created to do. We have a bunch of men who, complain about the woes of the world, but we have it easier than any generation has ever had it in history. We have been called on for thousands of years to do the very act of being the head of the household. And we want the easy way out, which from a societal standpoint, it just rips the fabric of society and rots it if we are not doing what we are called to do. And then misconception number 3 is that vulnerability equals strength. So there's a huge misunderstanding around this term vulnerability, and it really irks me because vulnerability by definition is weakness. And humility and emotional intelligence are not the same as vulnerability. A baby chick is vulnerable. A newborn baby is vulnerable. A hole in the wall around the castle is vulnerability. But people in society have recently created this thing about being vulnerable and that is true strength. When words have meaning, then we need to honor those meanings of what those words mean. So when someone says be vulnerable, it's like, no. We first have to clarify what the definition of vulnerable means before we actually talk about being vulnerable. Does that make sense? So it's like, okay, if we have the definition, means weakness, and anyone can go and like look this up. And I'm sure Webster's dictionary is slowly changing things for society of what the definition means. But a baby chick is vulnerable. Men are not created to be vulnerable. The second that we become actually by definition vulnerable, especially to our wife, it's going to put her in a state of high cortisol levels that are going to rise because she's going to feel not safe. So she's not going to feel safe and secure. So then it's going to force her to be in a fight or flight situation. So do I try and take over and step into this masculine role to fix whatever problem is preventing me from feeling safe and secure? And that's not good. That's not good for the relationship. So by no means am I saying to not be humble. So if we look up the definition of being humble, completely different than vulnerable. Again, vulnerability means weakness. So should we be humble in the sense of, I don't know everything? Should we be humble in the sense of admitting when we are wrong? Yes, we should be doing those things out of respect, because nobody likes the guy who's never said fucking sorry in his life. Nobody likes the guy or will actually respect the guy who's never admitted when he was wrong. Those guys suck, okay? And those type of guys are going to be seen through. You're going to see through them as a wife and as children, and your peers are going to see through you. So should we be humble? Yes. Does that mean that we go to our wives with all of our problems? It does not. There's no place for us to put them in a position where they don't feel safe and secure. And so then it's like, well, who do we talk to? It's like men need a brotherhood. There's 2 things in life that men need, is a purpose in life and a brotherhood. That's it. We're simple creatures. Women, they have their own things that they need in life. One is feel safe and secure. The second the cortisol levels are risen, and again, I've said this before, you can literally get a blood test done and see that majority of women, especially in relationships with men who have not become men, because anyone can be a husband and father, but it takes a true man to be a good husband and father. You get their blood work done, see elevated cortisol levels, and it's like, well, that explains a lot. It really does. So this whole like vulnerability thing, really got to wrap that up. I don't know how it broke out of the woodworks, but that thing is off to the races. And so a strong man leads with stability, self-control, and love, creating a safe environment for his family. So stability. Again, he has the stability and doesn't feel that he needs to be vulnerable, put his wife in a poor position. He has control over his emotions, because emotional intelligence is very important. Emotions are very, very good. You know, excited is emotion. Being sad that someone passed is emotion. Knowing you're going to get laid, you got all sorts of good emotions going. Again, self-control, not feeling that you need to word vomit on your wife when it comes to negativity. Self-control when it comes to drugs, alcohol, money, gambling. All these things, are so many avenues that self-control, stability mean. And then again, creating that safe place for the family is huge, because your kids, you don't want kids to live in fear. You want kids to just respect and want to grow up to be you, because eventually your kids are going to see through you and figure out exactly who you are as a person. It's just a matter of time. So key traits of a strong head of the household. Again, emotional control. A man must master his emotions not be mastered by them. So we got to think about that. If we master our emotions, that's good. Or we can be mastered by our emotions. And again, it takes a lot of, I wouldn't even say it takes a lot. It takes a understanding and humility to get over allowing them to control you, because you got to be very self-aware of in the process of, hey, am I letting this thing make me go from 0 to 10? Why? What is it about this? Is it something that triggers me from my childhood that someone else did? Is this something that offends me in the identity that I have as a man? You know, what are the things that essentially trigger someone who is in control of his emotions? And then you can essentially be played by your spouse, society, the second they realize what those buttons are. And your spouse may not do it intentionally, but in the heat of the moment, revert to, I know how to piss them off because I'm in a place where I don't feel safe and secure. And so I need to light a fire under his butt. And most of the time that just backfires. So Marcus Aurelius, again, he says, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. It kind of goes the same thing. Master your emotions. So leaders need stability that creates a sense of safety for his family. If we don't, then where does that actually put our alert system? Where does that put our cortisol levels? If we are creating an environment where everyone just does not feel safe, whether it's you're just even simply quick to anger, whether it's stability financially, whether it's stability in your relationship, the ebbs and flows of the relationship, stability just in your own emotions, the way you project love, the way you project a lack of love. Where is the stability coming from, and what is causing us to not be stable? Because like if a man says he's supposed to be an oak or a rock, a fucking oak and a rock are stable as fuck. The only thing that's moving those things is God, you know? So let's go to trait number 2 is like sacrificial love. Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So what does it look like for us as husbands to love our wives as Christ loves the church? How do we earn the trust and respect from her? Because I tell you, you earn the trust and respect from your wife. Life is the Instagram, the movies. It is so smooth, and she is going to feel in her most feminine state. She's going to want to sleep with you more. She's going to come to you, help you grow more. When she's in those places, a woman can multiply everything that we have to offer. You know, like literally and figuratively. Literally, she's able to give us offspring, you know, multiply our offspring. Literally, you give her a home, you know, you buy a house, she'll multiply that into the most loving home that there is. She will go through a nesting period. And it's like, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to come home to a place that just feels amazing to be at? There's always jokes on Instagram that, you know, the most expensive thing is my wife. It's like, but statistically, men who are married with children make more money across every category than men who either are married or men who are single. She allows us to be in a position where we have a family and multiplies our income. They want to feel so safe and secure that she's going to encourage, even if it's subconsciously, more of your investments to work. Yeah, and to spend a lot of it on vacations. My wife wants to travel around the world. But the wife will literally multiply everything that we do. And that's once she feels in that place of, you know, trust and respect. So number 3 is vision and direction. You know, a man must have a clear vision for his family's future, financially, spiritually, and relationship-wise. So if you are just in a boat, floating abroad with no direction, that's not a clear vision. Like me and my wife, we literally will talk about our week, we will talk about our year and the things that we do, and we'll plan things 6 months in advance, 5 years in advance, like, hey, this is what I want to be at. And I will have her hold me accountable because she is my confidant. Like our wife should be our confidant. Like in the movie 300, when Leonidas looks back to his wife because he gives her the look, we're going to go to war because I'm going to front kick this Persian into the depths of the well. And she gives a nod back. He didn't look to his general or any of his homies, right? He looked only to his wife in that scene. And I think that's a perfect depiction of how it should be. It's like, hey, this is what I want to do with our money. This is what I want to do with XYZ. And she just gives the nod like, yeah, go for it. So number 4 is leading by example. You know, Gavin, you mentioned that in the beginning. because our actions speak louder than words. Live the life that you want your family to emulate, which that is so big. The reason I go to the gym so early in the morning and go on my walks with the dog, and it's like my dog needs his workout. I need my workout. My wife needs his workout. My kids need their workout. And so they know that I'm always doing it, because I can't be like, son, if you just hit the gym more, you would be better at the sports that he likes if I'm not hitting the gym. It's like, I can use the example with my boys. If they want some sort of candy, I'm like, do you ever see dad eat that? They go, nope. It's like, that's right, you've never seen me eat that. And they're like, well, then it must not be good for our body machines, so then they won't eat it. And I tell them, it's up to you, but do you see dad eat it? And they, no. Okay, go for it if you want. And 99% of the time they just don't. They won't eat it because it's junk. And they realize what it is that we do, or the amount of love that I show, that I give to my wife before I even give any love to my kids, because I love my wife more than I love my kids. And I'm going to remind everybody that every single day through my actions. I'll facepalm my boys if they run up to give me a hug at the door, because I'm giving my love to my wife first. So I get out of the way, Junior. Bah. But how often in society are we actually loving our child more, which is going to lead them to have a fucked up relationship? I mean, that's what we do. So, practical steps for us to lead our family. Spiritual leadership. We got to lead our family in prayer, Bible study, attending church regularly, open communication. We got to foster trust by creating a safe place for our family to share their concerns, dreams, and fears. Like, I will ask my kids, what did they fail at? What's there something that they want to do, improve? And like, we talk about that stuff. Even with my wife, it's like, hey, what's one thing you want to change? What's one thing you want me to work on? And you got to be humble enough and have no insecurities or pride to where when she tells you what she wants you to work on, you're like, okay. And now maybe there's a time where you're like, okay, I don't agree with that, and here's why. And you give her a good explanation, and she's like, okay, I've never thought of it that way. But you're not getting defensive. You're not allowing it to control your emotions, you to act out or suddenly get angry. Another one, decision making. Always consider what's best for your family as a whole, not just yourself. I used to do what's good for me. And again, it doesn't create a healthy environment. And then self-improvement. We got to invest in our own growth, physically, mentally, spiritually. I mean, just the fact that some of you guys are here, investing in that growth. Here's a little call to action for you guys. So being the head of the household is not necessarily a title, it's a privilege. It is a privilege. Again, a man cannot be a good husband or father until he's become a man first. So let's wrap this back to when Adam and Eve, right? She ate the apple, right? She took a bite of the apple. And then God called for them and Adam hid. And then what did he do? He said, who took a bite? And he said, she did. She made me do it. He did not take responsibility for his wife. He did not take ownership. He was not in a position to lead. He lacked leadership. So again, he wasn't the man he needed to be a husband or father. And I think that's so vital of why that is part of the story of creation. If you don't lead, their family will run astray, chaos and order. We got to remember that. So I guess, what is it that we can improve on? What can we do different? Then again, like Gavin, you're not married, but how is it that we just show up better? How we can lead? And then let's go over some questions.